Welcome to The Fiber, brought to you by Live Oak Fiber, where we weave together the stories of leaders, entrepreneurs, and changemakers who are the very fabric of their communities. Join us as we spotlight those who embody the spirit of connection, resilience, and progress. Hey everybody, Garrett here with Live Oak Fiber. I am the content creator, and I have a very special guest today. We have Uriah Matthews in the building. He is with the Walton County Economic Development Alliance. Again, first time getting that without screwing up. But Uriah, go ahead and take it away. Tell us about yourself, where you came from, and who you are.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me today, and
Absolutely.
Thank you for tuning in. My name is Uriah Matthews. I'm the Executive Director of the Walton County Economic Development Alliance. That is a mouthful. We're working on that. I came to the Alliance January of last year, and I came to Walton County in '89. I'm actually from a small community that Walton County has a very interesting relationship with, going back to its sort of origination, especially in the city of Definiak Springs. I'm from an area called Chautauqua, New York, and that has where the Chautauqua Institute was formed. And I have sort of a very similar story to those that often find themselves in our community. They started on vacation. So at the age of 4, my mother brought us down on vacation, and we literally just did not go home. So I've been down here since '89. Grew up between, I call myself more of like a Choctawhatchee kid. I grew up starting out in South Walton, then we moved to Destin. High school, we went to Niceville. And now as my adult life, I'm raising a family in Freeport, Florida.
Awesome. I have to ask, because I'm from California originally, moved here in 2020. Niceville High School, I was surprised to hear on how good they are at sports. Has it always been, like, have they been incredible since you were here, or has it been more of a recent?
It's been incredible for a long time.
Okay.
Yeah. So, when you drive by, you see all the years they went to state football. I played golf at Niceville High School.
Awesome.
We were not top ranked, but it was a great time. My brother, 10 years younger than me, he actually went to state with Niceville.
Oh, nice. What sport?
Football.
Okay.
It is a sports, pedigree.
They've done it right somehow.
They've done it right.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild.
Yeah, I mean,
and their band is
it good too?
It's an incredible band.
Okay.
I
see every time I drive on the way to work, because I live in Shalimar. I drive on my way to work and I see their billboards up that say, "Congrats to," just pick the sport. You won state or you won nationals or whatever they're at this point in time. And the high school I went to, we weren't really that great at a lot of sports.
Sure.
I was an athlete, although I don't know if you really consider me an athlete. I didn't do that much.
I played golf.
I was a soccer player, but I swear, like when I was younger, I felt like I was a lot better.
Yep.
And then I look back and I'm like, oh man, I was really bad.
Yeah.
But we didn't make playoffs once. Or if we did, it was because some other team had to drop out for some reason.
They didn't show up that day.
Yeah, really. Yeah. So we were bad at sports, but it's crazy to see how good they are. And just, I can't imagine. I really can't.
It's very interesting, kind of linking it to Walton County, with Niceville is a good segue. Niceville is really a unique community in the way that it is, north of the bay. Mm-hmm. It's close to Eglin. It's on Highway 20. And actually, geographically, it's almost a mirror copy of Freeport. So, now I'm a Freeport resident and member of the community there. We've got the same sort of peninsula. We've got the same, ours is called Bay Loop instead of Bay Shore, right? So we've got a lot of similarities. A lot of folks from Niceville are moving to Freeport that I grew up with and went to high school with. I think it'll be interesting in years to come when as Freeport continues to grow in its population. The Bulldogs are great, but how much greater will they be with the influx of additional talent and everything else that comes along with growth? It's very exciting to see my 1-year-old and 3-year-old. I'm excited for them to be Bulldogs.
Yeah, hopefully they become on the golf team too.
Yeah, we'll see.
I love golf. I'm so terrible.
I wish I would have played a lot more soccer.
Really?
The physical fitness aspect. My wife and my children are Hispanic Americans, so soccer is deep in her roots as well. Yeah. So I think my daughter just had her first year of soccer at 3 years old.
That's exciting.
So we're re-enrolling her now.
Yeah.
So
that's probably when I about started too. It's so much fun. I mean, watching them play, I imagine is going to be a blast for you guys, and it's just so much fun. I remember playing when I was young, and I just having my parents on the sidelines always cool, and then just being able to hang out with friends. I mean, it's good socializing too. I mean, it's excellent for kids to develop that ability.
Commit, you know, that commitment to showing up to practice and developing those tools in the toolbox, so to say.
Yeah.
That's
good exercise habits. It's
Again,
integral.
I wish I would have kept exercising with soccer.
I still feel that way. I mean, I walk upstairs, I'm like, this is embarrassing.
Yeah.
But that's awesome. Well, so kind of brings us into the first point. So the Walton County Economic Development Alliance. You've been in that position for a little over a year, correct?
Yeah, about a year and a half now.
Now, did it start off as a defunct, or was it already kind of like in place and it wasn't being operated in?
Yeah. So the history of the organization itself was formed in '96.
Okay.
And it's had sort of a couple different variations. It was once a council, then it was an alliance, then it was both.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm the executive director of actually two agencies. The council we rarely talk about because it's really just a sort of an asset class. It holds property that we own, and is governed collaboratively by the alliance, right?
Mm-hmm.
So prior my time, the alliance had gone through a couple iterations of public-private, exclusively public, and now we're public-private again. I'm looking forward to the opportunity that has been provided in taking it public-private. While the organization was in existence prior my time, just by objective measures, you know, we were not as active as our peers in the coastal communities. I try to measure ourselves versus Bay and Escambia, not from a competitive standpoint, but from a relative standpoint. I want to understand, you know, are we performing at a relatively equal measure to communities that are like ours? Yeah. Okaloosa and Walton County have been tied to the hip for ages, right? Yeah. Okaloosa, my father went to OJC, then it was OWC, now it's Northwest Florida State College with a little bit more of a oomph behind it, right? But Okaloosa, Walton, there's so many organizations that are both Okaloosa, Walton, you know, our Career Sources, Okaloosa, Walton, United Way, et cetera. And so, you know, I love to measure the Walton County Economic Development Alliance against the Okaloosa Economic Development Council.
That's one Okaloosa, right?
Yes, one Okaloosa.
Yep. Yeah, great people over there.
Great people. You know, they are mature in their expertise. You know, I moved 4 offices in the last year and a half. Wow. We are thankful. That's a really great point to mention to everybody. So really want to thank Northwest Florida State College providing space like they do One Okaloosa. They're providing space now to the Walton County Economic Development Alliance.
Awesome.
They've built out a phenomenal facility in Diviniac Springs at the Chautauqua Center. So it's bittersweet for me as well, you know, sort of serendipitous to be in the Chautauqua Center, being from Chautauqua, New York. So it's neat.
I feel like you're at home a little bit.
It is almost, you know, my family in New York can't believe it, right? Yeah. So it is very interesting. But I think what is happening is it's not that it just was not, it didn't have similar levels of investment put into it. It did not have similar production capacity relative to the amount of people working for it. When I came in, it was just my predecessor. Yeah. It was one person. So, you know, our peers, you know, have 2, 3, maybe some interns, some part-time staff, et cetera. Our community, I think, is ready for the acceleration of our Economic Development Alliance. They are, they are excited about the idea of diversifying our economy. The alliance was funded, just to provide some perspectives here. It was funded at $284,000 a year when I started. Then it went to $412 with my first budget request. I had actually built a budget where I requested $580,000 from the public, with the long-term intentions of minimizing that input while becoming a public-private organization. I can get into that a bit, but ultimately, that idea, the alliance funded me not to the requested ask of $580, and I think that makes sense, right? This new guy shows up, big dreams, big commitments. You know, we'll give you some rope, but I'm not sure we're giving you all of it that you're asking for. Yeah. So that is actually, a good example of government in all reality looking back. I believe measurably the Economic Development Alliance has performed. While doing those 4 moves, I was able to hire 2 part-time folks, bring some grants into compliance that were, just a struggle to deal with everything that they require and doing your job. So that's been helpful. And then along the way, I won the community through the Economic Development Alliance and a cooperation with Eglin Air Force Base. We won the opportunity to bring some grant money back to the community.
Oh, nice.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
So some grant money is to the tune of $830,000 is now being utilized to improve a really clustered intersection that doesn't have a left-hand turn lane for folks to make their way to Eglin. And so, folks that are making a right-hand turn, which is what Freeport folks have always done, is come to that Bay Loop and Highway 20 to make a right-hand turn. We're now going to get a traffic light, and we'll have 2 turn lanes, one dedicated west and one dedicated east. It's a small win, and some folks might ask, what does that have to do with economic development? Well, economic development at its core, our goal is to import wealth into our communities. And in order to do that, traditionally what we want to do is bring in jobs. But in order to bring in jobs, you have to have attractive conditions. Yeah. Traffic is one of those conditions that we hope to make more attractive. Yeah. So there's funding out there for economic development to improve infrastructure, and that was a great example of a use case.
Yeah. Before we go into the next point I want to bring up, Cole Randall spoke very highly of you. I was telling him that you were coming on the podcast in a week or 2, and he was like, "Oh, I absolutely love the guy." So Cole speaks very highly of you, so you have to give him a text message saying thank you.
Will do. Yeah. And that team is really great. Nathan Sparks and I just got to do a commercial forum with Emerald Coast Association of Realtors. Okay. We spoke in Santa Rosa Beach. We have really enhanced our collaboration. The 2 organizations were able to take out some ad space that was funded primarily through Florida's Great Northwest with some Triumph funding, actually. And we went to market to advertise to site selectors with our shared attributes, right? So every year there are publications out there and reporting institutions that try to help people understand where things are happening. Yeah. And actually, much to Live Oak's credit, with I believe it's around $60 million in Okaloosa County and about $40 million in Walton County is planned to be expended. We dramatically increased our rank in a recent report with broadband connectivity. We went from around 119 to, I believe, we're 22nd now in large markets across the country. That is huge, and that comes through the investment of folks like yourself. But that's a metric that is applied to both Okaloosa and Walton County. So why wouldn't we have a great working relationship? Yeah. So together, again, we're able to collaborate a lot. And we took an advertisement out to a site selector magazine, and it's got both counties, and it's got those award-winning attributes, and we ranked top 10, fourth in some metrics, and this is across the nation. Yeah. So, the guys and Kay at One Okaloosa, everybody's great. Kay is actually partly to blame for how we won the grant funding. Yeah. So, the comparison is Okaloosa County has had and maybe I should pause for a moment. I know this is getting a little off track with it, but it's a good point to talk about. Our communities between Okaloosa and Walton, there is a difference. And one of the biggest differences I like to highlight is our population. We're roughly the same size, but Okaloosa County is roughly 60 years in the future from a population standpoint to Walton County. So we're of a population of Okaloosa in the 1960s, 1970s. And that means it's almost like a crystal ball. We can look into the future of Okaloosa and say, how can Walton County maybe take lessons in the population growth that Okaloosa experienced and do better? That comes down to roads, et cetera, everything. We're dealing with essentially 1960s status quo prospectively. And so at the end of the day, that collaboration between our two communities is very important, right? And how do we learn from what's going on in Okaloosa? How do we bring it over to Walton County?
Yeah. Well, it's such a beautiful area too. I mean, that's one thing that Cole and I kind of got into a little bit, was that, I mean, basically everything that applies to Okaloosa County more or less applies to Walton County.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest thing, is that you have companies that want to come to your areas, and it's got to make sense for both the county and the population at large. And I think that's what's, I would say almost Walton County may have a slight advantage, is that north of the bay, for at least us, is taken up by a lot of Eglin. Whereas Walton County, I don't know exactly there what is owned by Eglin and what's available, but development out there, especially with Freeport and things like that, I mean, you guys have, I mean, the sky's the limit.
The perception is the sky's the limit.
Okay.
Actually, believe it or not, ironically, the sky is the limit. It's a fascinating topic to discuss, and we can get into that. I think I failed to close the loop on, crediting Kay again at Okaloosa. The point I was trying to make, and I lost it, was Okaloosa, because it's at that population benchmark, because it's in our future, their EDA is a much more matured, well-oiled machine. And I make the comparison, if we're both captains of ships, theirs is fully developed, right? And I'm a captain of a ship that we're building in progress while still trying to reach a destination.
Yeah.
And so the organization One Okaloosa actually has a defense-oriented group, and this will segue into why the sky is the limit. They have a defense-oriented group, and that's where Kay was able to bring up some of the grant opportunities, in which is what we ended up pursuing and winning in Walton County. So again, it's so neat to see how our communities work together. But so you look at Okaloosa and you look at Walton, and you presume that we have less taken up space. It's a very interesting thing, and it's a common thing. So Eglin, just for reference, is sort of basically the size of one of our counties, except it's flipped 90 degrees and it spreads across 3 counties, right? So Walton, Okaloosa, Santa Rosa County. And the bookends, so to say, are in Santa Rosa and Walton County. And so Eglin goes all the way up to 331.
Okay.
Physically in land. It has a much more expansion across our community beyond what you see in land. In addition, on the east side of 331, we have a lot of conservation lands that are similar to how Eglin operates in Okaloosa, meaning flanking 85 on both the west and east sides.
Yeah.
So while Eglin is not on the east side of 331, we have a tremendous amount of conservation lands with water management and Nakusi plantation. So those lands do create a similar experience like Okaloosa, where there will always be trees for a few miles on 331 because of those that conservation aspects. In addition, we've got a lot of airspace in Walton County that is protected by Eglin and its missions. And it's important. Walton County strives to support the mission by protecting that airspace and protecting development in those airspace areas of concern, so that we're redoing our comp plan and all those things we'll get into. Actually, one of my bullet points is make sure we talk about that. So we'll get into that later.
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting to see what you guys are doing. I've only lived in Okaloosa County for the 4 years that I've been here. Yeah, but absolutely love everything about Walton County. I guess that kind of jumps us into a next point, because I mean, obviously, there's a lot of potential with Walton County. Yes. You've seen 60 years in the future what Walton County can look like with Okaloosa. So that brings us into like the strategic plan of Walton County. And I know that's something you've worked on, you've planned on, you're deep you're in the thick of it. So let's jump into that. What is it? What do you have? What's your strategic plan for Walton County?
Yeah. So there's and I take the moment to sort of also identify that not only is there an economic development strategic plan, there's also a strategic plan of the county that they're working through approvals that was recently completed by the Institute of Senior Professionals. And that is an item to be completed at Walton County at large. Another thing that is not looked at as a strategic plan, but I would say is actually the fundamental basis of all wealth creation in a community, and that is how land is utilized. You can't economically develop a piece of property if it's not allowed to economically develop. And so that highlights the intimacy of both the county government and operations that I might be attempting to go after. it really starts with land use. Land use is incredibly important, whether or not it's this land needs to be used for farming or this land needs to be used for tourism development and this land needs to be used for housing. If we don't have a good strategy for land development, then economic development may suffer.
Yeah.
So we'll get into the economic development side of things. I'd like to sort of highlight, an outlook that I try to reference in relationship to Walton County, and it's really the front of house or the shop. And this speaks to our deep roots in new urbanism and the idea of mixed use. Walton County is a mixed use community in and of itself, with much of our commercial activity happening in one region, which is South Walton, right? That's a lot of commercial activity happening there. And then you have a bedroom community, which is the second portion of the mixed use in the center. So from 10 to the Bay, that is going to be a population area that really exponentially grows. North of 10, you've got City of Definiak Springs, but that's about the limitation of the population growth there as far as an urban center goes.
Okay.
And the remainder of that area, and by the way, Definiak Springs is the geographic center of Walton County. So the next north 50%-ish of the county, that's our garden, right? That is our agricultural community. That is where we'll also develop the economic development corridor of 90 and 10. And that's not a new model. That's happening across our community. In the Panhandle, the 90 and 10 corridor is where industrial development is showing signs of support. And even in Walton County, we have the Mossy Head Industrial Park. I drove by it on the way here. It's incredible. We've got 2 100,000 square foot buildings going up. It's really incredible. It's really incredible. We have more coming to that space.
And those have been leased already, or basically, not necessarily leased, but sold off, or is that still kind of up for grabs?
We're seeking tenants right now. So there are not tenants for those facilities, but the demand in our area is so strong that we were able to attract private investment to the area that said, if we build it, they will come.
Yeah.
And so it's a really neat opportunity. And again, the private sector is taking on that risk.
For the Mossy Head development or the industrial park, is that mainly going to be for defense contractors? Is that open to anybody?
Actually, it's already complete.
Oh, okay.
So it's been almost completely sold out. But what it does is its success demonstrates, a model that we can continue to pursue and we can continue to build off of. So I'm presently working how to repeat that again, right? And again, it also raises more attention to the fact that 90-10 corridor is so strong. There are approximately 34 acres where those 2 100,000 square foot buildings are going up. That developer has plans to develop more space. So the remainder is really there.
Yeah.
And now my goal, as well as the realtors representing that property owner, our goal is to fill it with tenants.
Okay.
So I work with them to attempt to attract business to their buildings as well.
So a lot of exciting stuff coming.
A lot of exciting stuff coming. Yeah, really neat stuff.
What's the time frame look for that? Is that over the next 5 to 10 years, or is it even longer than that?
I think it's much shorter for that area. I think that space in particular, as long as our growth rates continue to happen, I think we will get that area filled up sooner rather than later.
Yeah. What other initiatives do you have going on beyond just the Mossy Head?
Yeah, absolutely. So we got some really great recent news in regards to Definiak Springs. Definiak Springs is the home of really the only airport in Walton County. Yeah. It's a great airport. Our goal is to invest in that airport, bring the runway up to a little bit more capacity. It's got an extension plan to go to just over 5,000 feet. And our goal from an economic development standpoint is we're working on, how do we attract businesses that complement the airport and also maybe serve our greater aerospace cluster. Things that are really neat about our area is the amount of personnel that exit the Air Force, right, while being stationed at Eglin, and have those unique skill sets to then contribute to the economy. And that is noteworthy because in the Panhandle, actually outside of Florida, but in Mobile, there's a little aerospace company called Airbus, and their committed to creating the fourth largest commercial aircraft manufacturing city in the world in Mobile.
Wow.
And that's going to have a blast radius effect on the community surrounding it.
Yeah.
So Definiak Springs Airport's close proximity to 90.
Mm-hmm.
It's on 90. Close proximity to 10. And roughly a couple hours from Mobile. So the future of the Definiak Springs Airport could very easily be aerospace manufacturing, light use of the airport for that manufacturing as needed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then getting components and parts right over to Mobile. So I think that's a longer term build out. That's a longer term vision. You know, we need some investment in the airport in and of itself. Super big congratulations to the city council at Definiak Springs. The city, it's a city-owned airport, and they just were the recipients of $3.1-ish million from the governor for the development of that airport. So
that's exciting.
It's a very exciting opportunity. It is exactly what we're, you know, the other successes, again, are already happening in Okaloosa County because they're more mature. They're further down in their timeline of development. And Definiak Springs is going to see very similar success in years to come with the development of our own resources in that field.
What kind of conversations go into, because obviously building something like that is no small task, especially when you have information, like you just said, from Mobile, that Airbus wants to potentially become, or that area wants to become the fourth largest manufacturer of airplanes and whatnot. When it comes to planning something like that for Definiak Springs, improving their airport, improving the infrastructure in the area, how much conversation is dedicated towards kind of planning for the future, but also not necessarily banking, like putting all your eggs in one basket. So you're not building for this and then it may not happen. Sure. Is there a lot of conversations that go into that and making sure that you're still building to actually achieve something, or hoping for something like that to develop and impact you guys?
Yeah. I think airports present unique opportunities for all sorts of industrial development. And the reason for that is because, a hangar is a big giant metal box.
Yeah.
and people that manufacture stuff, they really only care about being in a big giant metal box.
Yeah.
Right. So what's neat about industrial development near or at airports is, regardless of what goes in them, you fit a lot of times the form and function, right? You accomplish the needs of logistics and mobility and transportation. So I would say, to that concern, right, of making sure we're not building for something and then that thing not happen. Industrial development around airports is almost inherently a safe bet.
It's like a one-size-fits-all.
Correct, right? Okay. Because our goal can be to win aerospace industries, but if we see a pullback in investment in that area, we can also fill it with another industry that just needs to be in a big giant metal box, right? So it's a neat play to be able to develop that airport.
Okay. That's awesome. Because I've been to Definiak one time, I think. But
you got to come by. And have you been to the lake yard? And
I have not. We had a buddy of ours that bought land out there, so we were like, well, come out and we'll just like go hunting or shooting or whatever. Sure. So we ended up just hanging out there for the day and doing absolutely nothing.
So we've got a couple of these coffee cups in the office now, so come by and have some coffee and see the office, and then we can go down to the lake yard. It's a very unique spot. And that's why the Chautauqua Institute located there for their winter retreats. So it's pretty neat.
Winter retreats is funny.
Yeah. Well, you don't want to be in New York or near Lake Erie in a winter.
I mean, it still gets cold here too. They're just probably used to like the frozen.
I've actually still never
been. Yeah. I've never actually been to New York still. Lived here 4 years, still haven't done it. I haven't even gone to DC or anything like that. But beyond
Definiak Springs was a great trade-off compared to lake effect snow.
Yeah. Moving on though. So there's a couple things that you were telling me about. You have an FFA tractor museum. What is that? What does it mean for the community, and why is it so exciting?
This is a really exciting new initiative. It touches on really all aspects of our community. And going back to that strategic plan, the strategic plan of the EDA is, we want to focus on traditional economic development activity. We want to focus on, sort of like our. It's not our primary contributor to economic development or our economy today, but we want to expand the defense piece, right? We have about a $500 million impact from the defense industry into Walton County today, as reported by the state. And we'd like to build upon that and appeal to the technology investment that goes there. And then we've got the ecotourism and agriculture piece. And so the Tractor Museum is both of those things. It's agriculture and it's ecotourism, right? And so it's a really fascinating idea. We have a collection, by all accounts of my research, it is the largest antique John Deere tractor collection in the world.
Really?
It's an incredible story. WaltonTractorMuseum.com is where you can learn about it. And we have, millions of tourists visit our area every year. And they all get on the same road to come down and see us. And they drive through our agricultural communities. And many a times when you make road trips, the Southeast is known for drive-in destinations, right? Our tourism that comes here, they're used to getting in a car and driving throughout the Southeast to get to a tourism destination. And when you do that, a lot of times small communities along the way pop up unique spots to stop. There's a peach market on 65. There's a pecan market on 65. And those all become staples of places we've probably grown up stopping at if you've lived in our community for long. And the Tractor Museum offers an opportunity for us to move a destination for all of that travel to stop at into the north end of our community. It really is moving. The cultural changes in our world. There's a push back to get to more in touch with nature and growing your own stuff and having a backyard garden and all of that stuff, right? There's a lot going there. So, when I look at my children, I did not have the ability to join FFA growing up, but I'm excited that my children are going to have the opportunity to do that in Walton County. And this museum is a combination of effort from our Farm Bureau, myself, and the gentleman who built this collection. The Farm Bureau and the current owner, Dr. Shepard, have created an arrangement where if the community can raise some money to purchase the tractor collection, he will sell it to them at a discount from what its appraisal value is, a dramatic one. And the Farm Bureau, Walton County Farm Bureau, has set up a nonprofit that will exist for the purpose of purchasing and owning and maintaining those tractors. And then all proceeds from the museum that they create are dedicated to go back into the FFA program of the Walton County School District. So it's really neat. It offers everybody a place to stop on the way down, maybe in a future version, also have a market to sell our local Walton produce. We're per the most recent farm census, we're the 5th largest producer of poultry, meat, poultry, and eggs in the state. Oh, wow. And we're the 8th largest producer of cotton. And we've got an inventory of cattle of around 7,000 head. So it's a neat community from a farming perspective. We're 60 years in the past, right? So our mission is, how do we maintain that agriculture and grow it as an economy, because it is a really neat piece to it's the garden, right? And it is part of our mixed use story.
What kind of challenges do you face when it comes to preserving some of that agricultural land, ensuring that owners aren't selling off their land to I guess take advantage of what it's worth, but also because obviously that the south part of your county is some of those beautiful beach and beach towns that this whole area has. I mean, you're talking Rosemary, Seaside, and so on. What kind of what challenges are you facing when it comes to making sure you're still supporting the south part of the county with its tourism and probably brings in a whole lot of money, but knowing that the north part of your county is such a huge potential, and as well as just how valuable and fertile it is for agriculture?
It's a great segue. I was double checking. I was like, I think he's nailing the segue into this next piece here. So there are lots of different ways to retain your past. committed family members, right?
Yeah.
That's the easiest one.
Yeah.
Committed family members don't sell the property when you inherit it, right?
Yeah. It's like the Yellowstone show, but probably not as violent.
No. But I've actually never watched Yellowstone.
Oh,
so
really?
I probably need to.
It's good. It is good. I enjoy it.
But you know, so that's the first step. You know, don't sell the property in which you inherit it. And if we can't do that, then, you know, there are interesting mechanisms to work to preserve agricultural lands. And oftentimes they either come from, there's sort of two different ways to do it. They can either be conservation easements that are for the purpose of preserving farmland. There's a lot of nonprofits and governmental organizations out there seeking to preserve farmland. Each of them for their different reasons, right? Some might have a national defense reason, right? Some might have a farming preservation reason. There's lots of opportunity there. The one that I'm most interested in driving the conversation around is, you know, there's an opportunity for communities to create, and I'm not an expert here, so I want to clarify that. I'm not an expert here, but there is an opportunity for communities to create transfers of development rights and creating markets and inflow areas for example, development rights, and outflow areas for development rights. So then the conversation with that person who's inheriting the property becomes the father or the mother or the family, the owner of it today. They can actually, if presented with the ability to layer on a conservation easement over their property, they can make sure that it stays conservation forever. Usually that happens with some sort of payment, right? The nonprofit. I would like to see our community investigate and discuss the virtue and nobility of having transfer of development rights baked into our development process. So our urban centers get the density, and our areas which we desire to protect, like wetlands and watersheds, sensitive areas and agricultural areas, can sell their development rights to the folks seeking to add density to their properties in the urban centers. I can't tell you if I think it's a 100% great idea today, but I believe
it's worth exploring.
It's a great avenue to explore. Walton County, and this is the segue here, the other initiative I've focused a lot of attention on over the last year, going back to sort of my comments earlier, is a fundamental basis of wealth in any community is its land use. If land use is not right, then you have land that will not develop. And so our county embarked on an initiative last year to have an advisory document written on, you know, what the future of our land use could look like. And that is a plan for Walton2040.com. And my greatest hope is that every citizen recognizes that land rights, private property rights, land use are fundamentally the most important thing in an economy. If those things are not right, your economy will not develop. And so it was not expected. I didn't expect this thing would happen in my first year here, but it happened. And I've dedicated a lot of time to raising awareness, participating, et cetera. And I think if we go down this road, then we can also investigate at the same time, what does a transfer of development rights piece look like if it's a good fit for our community.
Was there any lessons that maybe you learned that helped you kind of develop this Walton 2040 plan that you learned from Okaloosa, Bay counties, and I mean, I guess any of the surrounding counties? Was there anything that really influenced you? Like, you know what, I want to explore this a little bit more because I've learned this from Okaloosa and so on.
Yeah, I think, so to be clear, the plan for Walton 2040 plan is not actually being carried out by myself. It's being carried out by a contractor via the Board of County Commissioners. My participation is I want to make sure the land use is right.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure our community knows what's going on, and the business community and the industrial community and the commercial realtors and property owners. Everybody really needs to participate in this program, because this bureaucratic system can reevaluate your value, and it's important to pay attention to. I think in my participation in these events, it's been very clear to me that when communities do not develop appropriately, they have consequences.
Mm-hmm.
And those consequences are cost of service, meaning if you're not value buying, right? Let's pretend we have 10 people living on a mile of sewer infrastructure versus 100 people living on a mile of sewer infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
If it's 10 people, they're going to be paying more.
Yeah.
To make or road infrastructure, right? Their cost burden is 10x what 100 people would be. It's a very interesting thing. And when you have a preference for sprawl, you raise the cost of infrastructure in your community. And through that raised cost of infrastructure, you lessen your ability to develop additional infrastructure because you have so much capital going to the maintenance of this sprawl-oriented infrastructure. And I would generally state that it's normal for a small community to seek to have sprawl happen.
Yeah.
I would also say in Walton County, sprawl is generally antithetical to the idea that we want to be preservationists. Our county seal has preservation on it.
Yeah.
And if we want to preserve, we should be seeking to have useful bits of land utilized to their maximum capacity.
Yeah.
We should not. And so what that looks like, I guess, to be very clear here, when you do not develop a community to its maximum efficiency, then you create traffic.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. We don't have a Target in Walton County.
That's true. Yeah.
Okay. So if you live in Walton County, you have to travel, let's call it 20 miles either direction to go to either Panama City or to Destin.
Mm-hmm.
So the argument is, do we make the roads bigger so that we can travel further, or do we bring the things closer to us? It's an interesting concept, right? And so I would venture to say that our shared communities in Emerald Lakes and Emerald Bay, right on the county line, those folks would probably be pretty excited if Walton County got a Target, because it would take all that traffic that drives by their house on 98 to get to Target. It would take it off the road. Yeah.
Well, but I guess that would also shift somewhere that funds are coming from. You either have a private entity that pays for, the improvement of the roads, maybe right where it's building.
Right.
And then obviously saves you guys money. You're not expanding roads. You're not doing more construction.
You're exactly right. So development, traffic is oftentimes a consequence of actually bad development or a lack of development in, either case, right? So, land use again goes back to sort of the core fundamental piece, and these conversations out in our community, we need to have them more. We need to be talking about them more. I'm excited. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk about it. But land use is very important, and I want to stress to our community that, should you be given the opportunity to weigh in on development, if you find yourself as someone who wishes to have our traffic circumstances improved, you also have to find yourself, by way of logic, that you also find yourself an advocate for good development. Because if we don't develop our community, you will be forever burdened to long distance travel to get resources and spend your money in other communities. Not that I'm here to steal sales tax revenue from Okaloosa County or Bay County, but then we could have sales tax revenue going back into our community in Walton County that we could use for roads. Yeah. So
it's a vicious cycle.
It's very interesting how all these logic arguments make sense. But if it's so easy for a person to take one item and say, well, we need to stop everything because we've got too many cars on the roads.
Yeah.
Well, then you'll still have too many cars on the roads because you're never giving Target the chance to exist.
Yeah.
Therefore, you're never reducing traffic.
I think it's a great example to show just how complicated some of these things can be. It's not just a one solution solves every problem. It's you don't add another lane and that solves all your traffic issues. You still have the hundreds of thousands of people that are traveling on 98 to get from Panama City to Pensacola, or, all those things. It's like you still have so many issues that aren't just solved from one solution. So it's a perfect,
It's a big deal, and there's often many more factors that go into it than people want to confess, right? Affordable housing is going to be a big consequence of whether or not we have the land use right. Walton County really needs a lot more housing. A comparison, a benchmark, comparing to Okaloosa County, the Department of Revenue puts out data on parcels, et cetera. And in Walton County, we've got roughly one apartment complex per 2,500 people, over 10 units. And in Okaloosa County has one per 1,200 people.
Okay.
So they've got twice the amount of complexes, which gives them more fortitude in maintaining a better housing stock for their workforce and lower pricing. So when you don't have the supply, it's just a macro conversation. If you have the supply, then you can alleviate some of the demand pricing. If you do not increase supply, you will not alleviate demand pricing, and you'll find yourselves forever burdened by affordable housing. And by moving your affordable housing further and further away from the jobs, then you take parents out of the homes, away from their kids from school. Can you imagine driving I can't imagine driving 2 hours every day, an hour each way.
I did it.
Right. And so these things, when you become a parent, when you're single, you're like, I can drive an hour, not a big deal. But when you're away from your kids, you start thinking about these things, and that affects their ability to read in school because you're not spending enough time with them talking or reading books. And there are so many factors that go into this story. And if we're not sitting down and talking about them comprehensively, we will find ourselves still frustrated because we didn't come up with good solutions.
I wish I could say there's going to be a one perfect solution for everything, but it's just not the case. But yeah, really. But so we talked a little bit about the past of the EDC or the EDA, excuse me. Over the last year, what have you what do you think has been the biggest changes that you've participated in or been the leading force in? What has been your biggest accomplishment so far? And then also we'll jump into challenges here soon too.
Yeah. The accomplishment so far, thank you, Live Oak. We should call this out. This is a great segue into complimenting Live Oak and sort of one of the accomplishments we've had. So, we took the move from strictly being publicly funded. We took the move and we went into a public-private partnership opportunity. And this is common in economic development in that this is a path that Okaloosa pursues. It's what Escambia County pursues. It's what Bay County pursues. We were only being publicly funded. And if you've grown up around here or you're moving here, politics, generally we're fiscal conservatives, right? So I really wanted to take that root core and say, how do we continue to be fiscal conservatives with this thing I'm asking for more money with? And as I'm asking for more money, my statement has always been, but give me the chance to raise money from the private sector. Yeah. So we went through a major bylaw rewrite. We did that in about November of last year. And since November, you are one of those founding trustee members, along with several others. And we've raised $75,000 from the private market on a committed annual reoccurring basis. I'm hoping to get to 100,000 in committed funds, annual reoccurring by November. And that's a huge accomplishment because long-term, that should lessen the impact to the public, while also at the same time creating the business community and engaging business community synergy with this economic development thing, the business community, the government, and we can all get in the boat together and row the same direction. That was huge. Yeah.
Are the challenges that kind of associated we've talked about before kind of, I guess, bleed into what you're experiencing now with Walton County? Obviously, bringing in private funds is going to help you in a multitude of facets. But is the challenges that we've discussed just before this going to be kind of the same thing, or either there's different challenges you expect to encounter?
So, with the additional funds, I hope to I'm the only full-time employee today.
Okay.
It is a very demanding job. So I'm excited to add capacity with this next year's budget, and the added private investment. The challenges facing Walton County is their community development challenges. In all reality, shout out to our school system, Russell Hughes, and the school board of Walton County. They have created an environment where we are ranked 3rd in the state.
Oh, awesome.
I believe there's a set of scores where we actually ranked 2nd as well. That is a condition that businesses are looking at when they are entertaining communities. How good is that school system? Because if you've got children, that's a big metric, right?
Yeah.
And so right now, we're kind of in the community development phase.
Mm-hmm.
We have a low unemployment rate.
Okay.
And with a low unemployment rate brings not the promise of workers,
mm-hmm.
right? So when you're trying to attract a business, when you start talking about, hundreds of jobs with an unemployment rate, let's say in Walton County, let's call it 3%, that's only 1,500 people-ish that are looking for a job. So when you have somebody come in that says, hey, I'd like to hire 500 people. So does that mean that those 1,500 people are all going to get jobs, or are we taking jobs from other businesses? So what I mean by community development is, I think one of the fundamental challenges as well is taking advantage of the idea that people want to be here.
Yeah.
They want to be here. Folks are moving to the entire Panhandle, and they're paying cash for houses because they're coming from higher cost communities.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to take advantage that is a welcomed opportunity, as well as double down on our ability to develop for that workforce housing. And if we do that, I think the challenges will get easier.
Mm-hmm.
Housing is a big challenge across the Panhandle right now. And if we can fix that, then we'll be good. So it's kind of setting the table, so to say.
Mm-hmm.
We need to really double down on ensuring conditions are correct, advocate for our community as much as possible, but not ignore the fact that if we improve conditions, it becomes a lot easier to advocate.
Yeah. Is there any discussions on, because obviously you're talking about community building, I would almost say there's probably a portion of your job that has to go towards like the idea of family building, because I imagine with Florida, and probably all of Florida entirely, is that there's a lot of part-time residents, people that live up north that come to their homes 6 months out of the year or during the summer times or winter times probably. Do you have issues when it comes to making sure that the people that are moving here are younger families or people that are in the workforce and not just maybe retirees that call Walton County home but don't work?
It's that is a really deep question. So I guess what I'd like to highlight is, because COVID happened,
mm-hmm.
We have nationally seen a dramatic change in where people want to live.
Yeah.
It also coincides with a thing called baby boomers
mm-hmm.
wanting to retire.
Yeah.
Right. And find homes where they can purchase and experience high quality of lives. And the Panhandle is a great place for that.
Yeah.
I would actually theorize. Yeah. My hypothesis would be that, due to COVID and the boomer population seeking to migrate, we have actually created a new component of our economy
mm-hmm.
in the Panhandle, and that component is, I guess broadly I would call it independently wealthy folks.
Yeah.
Meaning they don't have to work.
Mm-hmm.
But those folks bring money.
Yeah.
That is a true importation of wealth. But those folks need services.
Mm-hmm.
They need nurses. They need waitresses. They need folks in the grocery stores. They need tons of employees to support them. So, and I would also put another group into that category, which is your stay-at-home remote workers.
Mm-hmm.
So your remote workers, again, they're not dependent upon me creating a job for them because they brought one. They brought their job with them, but they're at home and they're independently wealthy, so to say.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a big deal. That's one side of it. The other side of that coin is Yes, we need families because families supply, the folks that the kids that are working at Chick-fil-A or, in a fast food restaurant or at a regular restaurant. I mean, my first job with a W-2 was in this complex. I rode my bike from my parents' home just down the street, and I rode my bike to this complex to work in a pizza restaurant as a dishwasher during my high school. I think I was 14. So, families are a very interesting component because they oftentimes supply so much of that service sector job in the early ages of employment. And then those folks hopefully then evolve into being able to take advantage of the jobs that I hopefully am partly to blame for, in 10 or 15 years and through our efforts. Yeah. So yes, I would try to remember for our community, it's very important that for every, household that is taken up by folks that aren't out actively working on our environment, we also need houses that support families because, or the working class, because those are the folks that support those folks. Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's a very interesting thing.
Yeah. I mean, there's conversations we've had, with Cole, with Nathan Sparks a while ago. It's the same issues. Obviously, they're not unique to anybody. They exist across the whole state, the whole nation. And I know, even talking to friends, the biggest thing is making sure there's affordable housing, that there's enough work. And I think here, Okaloosa County, Walton County, Bay County, like Tyndall Air Force Base, Eglin Air Force Base, Hurlburt, Pensacola Naval Station, having such a huge presence of the military and DoD contractors and things like that opens up, especially you just talked about building out all these different industrial parks and opening up more opportunities with the airports. That's bringing in, aerospace companies or even just regular commercial airline type stuff. Having that opportunity is huge for someone that's my age, maybe even younger, that's thinking about moving out of the big cities, New York, San Francisco, San Jose, places like that, where it's like, there's huge opportunity. And that's the work that you're doing now, which is so awesome, is that you bring in one company like that, you bring in so many families and so many younger people that now can call this home, where it's cheaper to live, probably offers a better quality of life. We've all seen,
it's great.
Yeah, it's beautiful here. So that's the biggest thing. And that's where always my concern is long-term, it's what is available to the younger generations? Because obviously as things get more expensive, gas prices have gone up, cost of bread has gone up, things like that. It's crazy. But having the initiatives that you've implemented and that you're actively pursuing is so important. Well, I guess, what's your message to a young person like me that says here is a great opportunity for you? What do you have to say? Pay attention to us for the next 5, 10, 15 years. What do you have to say to them?
Yeah, I have so much to say. I think I maybe step back for a second. There's also this concept of education, and it's dramatically changing in our lifetime. I would imagine we're similar in age, but maybe we're not. I'm 38.
I'm 28.
You're 28. Okay, so 10
pretty
years
close,
younger.
pretty
Okay.
close.
You're my brother's age. Yeah. So state was whatever year you graduated high school. Yeah. So education is really a very interesting thing that has changed, beyond high school. And a lot of the jobs that I'm talking about, manufacturing and things of this nature, they do not necessarily require college.
Such a good thing.
Right.
I love that.
Right. So it's a very fascinating circumstance. Yeah. Because I feel like I was on the tip of the spear I did not go to college. I was on the tip of the spear of this movement of not doing college. It was simply a math equation. And I loved this community. I never wanted to leave. Yeah. And that required me to leave, to go to some big college that all my friends were going to. I was like, well, I'm not doing that. Yeah. And I was making really good money because my dad made me start working early. So, I was riding that bike. And by the time I was, a senior in high school, I was making about the same amount of money as my teachers. And the math just said, Uriah, just work more. Yeah. And you'll figure this thing out. And that played out well in my lifetime. I think so to young folks, I think it's, evaluate, what do you want to do and look at that whole picture of that industry and that future and determine, does it require college? And because a lot of these jobs that we're going after, they do not require college. These folks will train you to do this stuff, to work the line or to drive a truck or whatever. And as we get more and more of this, they're pretty high paying jobs. Manufacturing pays higher than the average wage in all of our counties across the board in the Panhandle.
Yeah.
I would just, I wish I had something really tactical to say to folks. I guess if I was able to say something to young folks, I would say it's not about, and this could be controversial, I do not believe your career is about doing what you love. Mm-hmm. I believe it is about loving what you do. And I believe that if you love your community and this is where you want to be, figure out how to make it a great community, contribute, participate beyond the job. If you have input to your community, bring it to me. Help me understand how we need to make this community better. Continue to love your community and love what you do, and be participatory in the future of your community.
Yeah.
And for all the folks coming here that we're going to attract to this community, very much investigate the ways of these communities you're moving to. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people buy the postcard.
Yeah.
That 2-day vacation in Walton County or Okaloosa County, that was great. I want to move back there. They buy the postcard and they don't remember that the reason it's so great is because we do some things differently. Mm. And so I'll give another example. It goes back to this whole transportation thing, and we have a lot of folks moving here right now. So this is for you. If you're moving here, if you've moved to our community recently, remember you moved here because of the conditions that you perceived. And when you move here and say, why don't we have more proactive road building? Why don't we have carless, roads, right? You move to a community that is in its growth phase.
Yeah.
And you also move to communities that are some of the lowest taxed communities in the country. The Panhandle's some of the lowest in the state, if not the lowest. And reference that to where you're moving from. How much were your taxes there? Did they proactively build roads? Do you want to pay that much taxes here? Right? We can proactively build roads if you want to give us more money.
Yeah.
But our way of life in the Panhandle is different.
Yeah.
While we are growing up into urban centers and things of that nature, I think many of us that live here and many of us that are moving here would like to retain the values of low taxation and government out of our lives. So when you come from another community, be very careful to say, let's build more roads. Because if we do that, we might ask you to pay more taxes. There's a children's book called If You Give a Mouse a Cookie, and it talks about the consequences of those decisions. So I think it's very much the same way. If the folks demand we have more roads, there might be another consequence. Like you may have to pay more taxes.
Yeah.
So,
which I think leads perfectly into the last question I want to ask you, because that's politics gets into the main focus of where we're going, because obviously when it comes to the development of a whole county, there has to be a buy-in from whether it's state legislatures and senators, whoever it may be. But politics has its place. So we're coming up onto election year. Yeah. There's lots of stuff coming up. What is it that maybe you're concerned about or want to talk about that could implement or really affect the residents of Walton County entirely?
Yeah. I'm gonna try to be careful in that I do not give too much of my personal opinion here. In that I don't think it's fair for me to do so. But I think it is safe to say that economic development is about a growth-oriented future. Fair, I think we'd all agree with that universally. Yeah. So speaking from a growth-oriented future, this is why it's a perfect segue. There can be challenges when you exist in a growing community. I would generally say most of us that have been here for a long time, we've been kind of always living with growth challenges.
Yeah.
98 used to be 2 lanes. It actually used to even be in different areas. So, along the way, 98 got moved, and now it's 6 lanes wide in some areas. This community has always been growing. I believe there is a danger to the future of our community in politics today, and I believe that is a danger that is born from people that want to literally stop our community from progressing. And that goes back to the land use thing we talked about, et cetera. There is open discussion in our community today about stopping development, not allowing development on property that you don't even own. That is not a value that is rich and deep in this community. Private property rights is a big deal. And should a neighbor be able to tell another neighbor that they can't build on their property? That is a deep, fundamental question that people should really soak in. And if it's just about traffic, then you're really making bad decisions because now you're not making development efficient. Not developing is not smart.
Yeah.
And there are folks out there that will tell you, well, we need smart development. Well, smart development is maximum utilization of property so that you have value buying in your infrastructure rather than sprawl, right? I had a really interesting conversation with somebody that before my time here, I was advocating for density on a development. And I said, being a community that, Walton, that appreciates, that has a high amount of preservation and conservation in its community, we should seek to have clusters of density, because putting people vertical in apartment complexes, which is not bad, by the way. I lived in them until I was about 33, 34. Some beautiful apartments. We can't, affordable housing when I moved here was a trailer. That was our first home. It was a trailer. We don't want trailers everywhere. So if we don't want trailers everywhere, what's affordable housing? Affordable housing is apartments for our generation. And it speaks to preservation as well by building up. And somebody came up to me afterwards and said, why do you think density is good for conservation? Well, it's because you don't impact the nature. You don't impact, you don't put road and surface and pavement over all these things and grass and clear-cut properties. You build up. It is appropriate to build up if you are also a conservationist. So I would just say, I think there is a growing movement that tends to think the solution is stopping it all. That is literally the worst thing we could ever do if we want to reduce traffic on the roads. If stopping development is because you think there's too many cars on the road, you are objectively wrong. You are objectively wrong. And yes, we should want to have target and the amenities that we get out on the road for be closer to us. And that only comes with the idea that there are customers. If there are no customers, we won't have services.
Yeah.
So again, Walton County is the population of Okaloosa in the 1960s, early 70s. And we're going to the future to attempt to stop that you're just getting in the way of progress.
Yeah.
Communities around the world would love to be like us, growing. There are communities that are dying. If you don't want to be around people, maybe you're in the wrong spot, because we are growing.
Yeah.
We are really growing. And so, I think smart development is proper utilization of property, not superficially lessening density and lessening its use. It's using it to the right way.
Yeah.
And so from a political perspective, I would ask that everybody be guided on the spirit of growth, and we have to. We're in a fundamentally challenging place. For decades, we've grown not like this. It's very surprising. We've always been growing, but not at the rate we have recently. And communities must grow at a minimum of their natural growth rate. And then they must also grow to satiate the demand from the external communities wishing to move here. If we attempt to stop that in any way, we will only increase demand.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. Because we'll fail to deliver on supply. And therefore, I think we will end up without community. Mm-hmm. Folks are driving further and further and further to work. And when you don't pass the people that serve you in the grocery store, that's not community.
Yeah.
Community should be the idea that the folks that we go into a dining facility that serve us, or we serve them, we also pass in the grocery store. And if we're not doing that, that is generally not community in my eyes. If we're telling the same people that we interact with in commerce that they have to live an hour away, mm-hmm. they're not necessarily in the community together.
Yeah.
So I would just ask that everybody really settle in on that. It's a touchy subject, but make good, life-oriented, community-oriented decisions that recognize bureaucracy can be both good and detrimental. Mm-hmm. And it's important not to make detrimental decisions.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think we're coming to the end. I want to give you the opportunity to have the final word. What do you think? How do people get involved with Walton County Economic Development Alliance, and what do you think they need to know?
Yeah. That's a big one. So please visit WCEDAFL.com. That is our website. I am hiring, by the way. So this could be dated, so you may take that off at some point, but I am hiring, by the way.
Today is July 26th.
I'm hiring. I'm actively interested in seeking investors like Live Oak is in our organization to be part of this growth-oriented, community-oriented organization. We do hold public open houses at our offices at Northwest Florida State College. Pay attention to our website for that information. On social media, we only do LinkedIn because the others are not generally community oriented. So I don't have the time for Facebook and some of those things, right? So LinkedIn is very professional. It's very oriented around reality. And so we engage on LinkedIn, follow us there. And I would just invite everybody to participate, not only in economic development directly with myself, but, and really commit time to your community. We'll all make this place better if we do that.
Absolutely.
So, thank you very much for your time, and thank you for sticking around if you paid attention this whole time.
Uriah, thank you so much for showing up today. I appreciate you. I always love having these conversations. I mean, the conversations with Nathan Sparks, Cole Randall, and we've done it in our other market in Brunswick. You guys are just so rooted in your communities that you serve. You guys know so much, and it's just so wonderful to know that there are people that have been born and not necessarily born actually, but raised in these areas for so long that know so much about it. So thank you for caring enough to want to be able to do this and be telling everybody that you can about what's going on so they can get involved and at least know what they can look forward to in the future. But thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Garret. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into The Fiber. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe. If you want to learn more about Live Oak Fiber, visit us at liveoakfiber.com.